Hey everybody, Emily here, the founder and CEO of Bossed Up. Welcome to today's Career Crush Q&A with Lauren Gibbs. It's my pleasure to have Lauren on today because she has a really interesting and very compelling career story she's going to share with us that's landed her as a member of the U.S. National Women's Bobsled Team, an Olympic hopeful. She's going to be tuning in from Lake Placid, New York, where she's in the midst of getting ready for a whole bunch of Olympic trials and big, amazing competitions. Now, many of you know this already, but I'm going to give you a quick refresher in case you don't. Bossed Up is all about helping you craft a happy, healthy, and sustainable career path. And so these Q&As are really an opportunity for us to interview incredible women who I admire and really connect with others who have pursued nonlinear career paths, which I honestly think all of us have, quite frankly. And so I'm so pleased to have Lauren joining us today because she's going to give us a little bit of a behind the scenes look at how she went from mega success in the corporate world to saying, this is what I want. I'm taking a big leap and I'm going to pursue my athletic career in a whole new at a whole new level. So Lauren is going to be tuning in. And I should also say, you can tweet along with us, share your questions, tune in on Twitter with your comments, your questions, your suggestions throughout. You can tweet at me at bossedup.org or Emily Aries, and you can tweet at Lauren at LAGibbs84. So Lauren, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So to give people a bit of background here, you and I met at Brown University. I was a meager little freshman on the varsity volleyball team, and you were my incredible captain. What has happened since then? It's so great to reconnect with you. Give us some sort of background on how you went from varsity athleticism, getting your bachelor's from Brown, to where you are today.
Yeah, it's crazy. And by the way, you were not a meager freshman. You were awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, lefty power, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, it's funny because I'm going to have my 10-year reunion from Brown soon.
Yeah.
And it feels like just yesterday, that we were all playing volleyball together and graduating and all that stuff. So I'm trying to think of where to start. I guess it started, back when I graduated from high school. I started with a company called Cutco Cutlery. And I think that's where I first learned about work ethic and just understanding that whatever you put into whatever you're doing is exactly what you're going to get out of it. So, just learning sales, learning organization at 18, learning, how important your word is important. So I think that was a really good foundation. And obviously, Brown University is a great place where you can, experience everything and anything all at the same time. So I think those two worlds together really helped. And then, I graduated from college and 22 years old, and I've been told my entire life that I can take on the world and I can be anybody that I want and I can be anything that I want. And then like a recession hit,
right,
and I'm unemployed. And I just remember sitting on my couch being like, how did I get here? Like, I don't even know who this person is, and just so frustrated and depressed and just having to like reinvent myself. So I applied for every job that I possibly could find and landed in a big corporate company called ADT, worked my way up through there, was the only Black female manager on the small business side, was younger than all my sales reps. So,
wow.
Just had to find a way to find respect. And I just, my goal is to learn something from every experience that I do so that I can propel myself forward and at least use that experience in the future so that I don't have to go backwards. I can always move forward. And, I was making a ton of money at ADT, but I was bored.
Right.
Like I was just bored out of my mind. And so, started with left ADT for a startup company called TrueMaker, which a good friend of mine that I met at Cutco is the CEO of. And then I was working out one day in a gym and my friend was like, hey, you're big, you should bobsled. I was like,
all right, I want to hold you right there because I love this story already because you grew up where in California?
In LA, yep.
In LA, right? So you're like scrappy, badass, entrepreneurial, essentially young woman who finds herself at Brown, who's always had something on the side, right? You were always selling through Cutco and sort of making something of yourself. And I remember we talked, you said that you thought about how much of an investment your parents made in your education and in what they've given you. And I feel like so many of us millennials in particular are faced with that, where we have this vast impression of opportunity. And then many of us, like you, graduated into a recession.
Right.
And so here you are, not that long after graduating in a recession, making six figures, living it up at a startup in a managerial leadership position. And you're like, man, this is what I've been going for this whole time. And yet it's not going to keep me going for the long time.
It's funny because, you think you know what you want and you think you know what you're meant to do. And then sometimes you get there and it's not everything that you thought it was. And I could still be at ADT and be making great income. And, for the most part, I was happy because I was working with people and helping people, but I just felt like there was more out there for me at this time. And, bobsled couldn't have come at a worse time because I had finished my executive MBA from Pepperdine, like 10 days before my first tryout.
That's right.
So, but luckily, education doesn't expire, so I can use it after bobsled as long as bobsled doesn't beat it out of me. But it's crazy. Like thinking back in my 20s, there were some really like just miserable times because, when you're told you're great your entire life, and then things are fairly easy for you. If you work hard at school, you get it. You work hard at athletics, you do well. But that's just not how the world after school is. You can work your butt off and not get exactly what you want. And that can be a big bummer. I kind of it's almost like Christmas morning as a kid. You open up all your presents at the end and then you're like, there's like this depression that hits because it's not everything that you thought it would be. And so managing expectations has been a big part. And also just taking a step back and realizing that I don't have to be perfect at something right away for it to end up working. And I don't have to be the best all the time for me to be happy. Like it's okay. The learning process is part of growing and having a fun story at the end of life.
Yeah, I think that's such a great way to put it because so many of our community members tend to be perfectionistic overachievers, right? Yeah. Which is probably the category we both would place ourselves in. And that is not always congruent with happiness. So when you were like really bummed and confused and frustrated and feeling a little bit lost, we talked about how I went through a similar period of my life. And that's why I started Bossed Up, because I think we are better off when we go through those kinds of moments together than in isolation. Did you ever sort of ask yourself, like, is it me? Am I doing something wrong? Or how did you navigate making those big life choices, like going back to get some more school through your executive MBA program or choosing to leave ADT? Like, how did you manage your own expectations, to borrow your phrase?
I guess, in my 20s, I was unemployed for like 7 months. And I would say that's probably right out of college is the toughest few years. And I was miserable. And I started thinking I just started feeling like I had screwed everything up and there was just nowhere for me to go. I was like, how do I get a reset? Like, how did my parents spend so much money? And I'm just like, I'm only good on paper. I'm not the person that everybody thinks I am. And I can't do what people are expecting me to do. So, and I think I like to be very open. So I went to therapy for 1.5 years. We're a big therapy family. And I feel like therapy is only good if you're ready for it. So I feel like at that time, that was my rock bottom. And, hopefully it doesn't ever get any worse than that. And I know other people struggle with whatever it is that they're struggling with, but therapy was huge. And there were some days that, I would talk to my therapist and I'd just be like, I'm just not as special as I thought I was. I'm not as smart as I thought I was. And there's no reason for me to have success over another person, because you kind of just expect it to happen. Because I see my parents, and my dad's been a therapist for as long as I can remember. I'm 31, and my mom's jumped around to a few different positions, but now she's been in a position for quite some time. And growing up, you don't really remember or see the work that it took for them to get to the top of their game.
Right.
And you just kind of expect to happen overnight. And when it doesn't, because you've been told you're so great, you feel like a failure. And that's a really scary place to be, to feel like a failure. So I'm a big proponent of therapy and just talking things out. And the great thing about a therapist is that they're a neutral party and they can never use it against you because they have to keep it,
It's interesting what you were talking about, like feeling like I'm only good on paper or that I can't live up to others' expectations of me. It so reminds me of a psychological term that I came across in Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, which, take it or leave it, like there's some really good nuggets of truth in there, called the imposter syndrome. And I'm going to do a video on this soon for our YouTube channel. But the imposter syndrome affects so many of us, and women more so than men. It sort of leaves us feeling like we're a fraud. Like at any moment now, we'll be caught for being the phony that we are. And it's this weird thing that I hear a lot of us on, when faced with setbacks, when faced with failure, inevitable failure on the road to success or on the road of learning, that journey that we're all on, can feel very intimidated by what we're supposed to be or who we're supposed to be. And it's, right. I think it's almost worse now with the social media culture that we live in. But,
I agree. I think everybody's social media makes it look like their life is so perfect.
Yeah.
And it's not.
It's right. Yeah. And that's something we all have to remember. And whatever form of help you seek out, like I appreciate your transparency there, because I have also benefited from therapy in my lifetime. And honestly, for some of us, it's just like financially out of reach at times. So like whatever your support group, squad, people, posse, whatever looks like, and especially here at Bossed Up, we're all about like making it accessible to get your life together.
Yeah.
Okay. So catch us up now. Bobsled. You've been a volleyball player. You've been a track and field rock star in high school. You played soccer too, if I recall.
Yep.
And you were way into CrossFit, right? When someone approached you about bobsled. So tell me what that has done for you since then.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a whirlwind, and I think I'm finally just catching up now, because last season was my first season. So, I went to this combine because my friends wouldn't kind of let it go. I was like, guys, I'm not actually going to make the team. But I was like, you know what? My philosophy is every opportunity that's presented to me, I have to see it through, because at the end of the day, how do you know? I mean, I went to the ADT interview on a whim and for a sales rep position and landed a managerial position.
Right.
So I figured I'll just go try it out. It's going to be at the training center in Colorado Springs, and I'll have a good story. So I made the cut, was invited to Lake Placid for a week. And I was like, perfect. That'll be my story. I'll stay at the training center for a week. I'll eat a ton of free food, and I'll push a wheeled bobsled, and then, they'll be like, okay, great, thanks for coming, you can leave now. And then it just, bobsled has not been something that has come natural to me. I think I'm a natural athlete, but I'm not naturally coordinated. And I'm the type of person that once I get something, I'm great, but it takes me a long time to just process everything.
Right.
I wouldn't say I'm a natural at anything. And that's probably some of my type A personality coming out, but it just takes me a while to get things down. So, it was a little intimidating and at first, and then you actually have to get into a bobsled. So you do all this stuff and you actually never bobsled, and then like they take you down for the first time and you're like, I could hate this. So I could be preparing to give everything up for something that I completely hate. And I've been fortunate. I've never ridden in a bobsled other than with someone that's an Olympic athlete. So they've been doing it a long time. So I've had a very charmed bobsled life. But, I made the World Cup my first year and competed in World Championships, and we took 5th. And now my pilot's the 2nd pilot in the world. She's awesome.
Wow. That is so badass. And Lauren, I have to jump in here and say, your achievements disagree with your sentiments of you not being a natural at things. But what I love about that is that the reality is none of us are a natural, right? At anything, really. Because that whole idea of someone walking in and hitting a home run is really troublesome, I think. And there's a whole body of research around this concept of the growth mindset. Have you heard of that before? Did we talk about this?
Yeah.
I love the growth mindset work that Carol Dweck pioneered in like the 70s and 80s, because it basically enables us to see whatever we're trying to do, whether it's win a promotion or become the best manager or become an Olympic athlete, as a learning process that's fraught with ups and downs. And if we accept that like nobody's going to walk on the team and nobody's going to, that we are all capable of improvement and learning, then it can actually open us up to the possibility of maybe I can do this. It's such a more open-ended, empowering philosophy, as opposed to assuming that we're born with fixed traits, that we are either an Olympic athlete or we are not. There are some people who are cut out for it and some who are not. And that is such a, it's such a struggle, I think, that a lot of us have picked up on that philosophy over the course of life. you know, especially in our the way we're sort of raised or conditioned through public education or whatever education you get. So that's so interesting to hear you, someone I've always looked up to, especially athletically, tell us that it's been a challenge, that you had to really put in a lot of effort and learning to basically get on the World Cup team your first year, which is an interesting.
Yeah, I mean, to give you an example, I think I improved quite a bit this season, but I think I spent more time crying this season than I did last season. Like, the better I get, the scarier it gets.
Tell me about that. Why?
Because then there's more to lose, right? And people get more and more excited, and then there's external pressures. And it's not people trying to impose pressure.
Right.
It's pressure in the form of people being supportive and people being excited for you and doing things like this where you're talking about your goals. And another thing I learned at Cutco was the more you talk about something, the more chance you have of actually achieving that goal. So I just tell everybody I'm going to win a gold medal in the 2018 Winter Olympics. And then I just remember that, you know, it's not necessarily in a race where I feel that pressure. It's in the off season where I feel that pressure. You know, the days that I don't feel like doing a sprint workout because I'm sore, the days I don't feel like back squatting because, you know, it's a tough week. So it's hard. And I think you touched a little bit about my resume. And it's funny because my resume is something that haunts me. It's something that makes me crazy. And that's one of the reasons I went to grad school, is because I felt like I was just good on paper. I didn't feel like I was the person that everybody thought I was, because I felt like, you know, I went to Brown, and Brown's such an impressive place. But if you really think about how I got into Brown, like, I called because I got a letter about track, and I didn't really want to do track. So they gave me Diane's number, our volleyball coach. And I called Diane, and she was like, well, we'll come watch you. And then she was like, I went out for a visit, and then she was like, well, if you want to come, you're in. And I was like, what? You know, so, and then, you know, I took the classes that I wanted to take, and I think, you know, for some people they were difficult, but because they were easy for me, it felt like I didn't really prove myself. So I felt like I had all this, you know, these degrees and this, it just looked really good, and I felt like I wasn't the person that my resume reflected. So when I went into job interviews, they're like, oh, you went to Brown. And I was like, yeah, but I took the easy classes, you know, and I was just tired of feeling like I had to explain myself. And so I figured going to grad school will legitimize it, because there's no way to get around an MBA program.
Yeah. Do you feel like it has to be hard to be something you're proud of? Okay, I'm hearing that come from you. And I feel like a lot of our ladies share that weird sort of guilt or whatever it is, the desire for struggle. It's very human, right? We need something. It doesn't feel good to win something that wasn't challenging.
Right.
And so there's so many of us who find ourselves, you know, in the deepest pit of our despair or our darkest moment or rock bottom, whatever you want to call it, and can't see that is the biggest opportunity that we have for growth and learning. It's a weird conundrum, but I'm intrigued by how you're feeling about it now. The other thing to think about is, as your visibility grows, it's very common for us and any marginalized sort of leader type who doesn't necessarily look like all of the stereotypical leaders that we see in America and across the globe,
right.
To feel risk averse, because it starts to feel too much pressure. And I guess my question for you, Lauren, is how do you stay sane? How do you keep a level head? How do you remind yourself that it's part of the journey, it's part of your story that you're creating, and win, lose, or draw, that you take care of yourself along the way?
Yeah, I think in this part's hard, because during the season we don't get a lot of time to ourselves. So this week has been very cathartic, because I'm actually in my Olympic training center room. It's a mess right now, but I usually have a roommate, and I don't this week. And so just getting some time to reflect and step back and realize that even if my journey ended today, the things that I have accomplished are things that there's a ton of people out there that couldn't even dream of doing it. And so it's important to appreciate all of it. You know, I don't want it to be hard, but I do want it to be hard, right? I just want to be the best now, but it contradicts what I just said, because if it isn't hard, I don't want to be at the Olympics and win that medal and feel like I don't deserve it.
Right.
So sometimes it's just a little perspective. And I think that for me personally, and I never thought I'd say something like this, it's come with age. You know, my 20s were really confusing and kind of shitty, excuse my language. But, you know, I wouldn't pay money to go back to my 20s. And
Right.
I feel like there's so many people out there that have dreams that don't have either the financial opportunity or don't have the education or don't have the support that I have. So at a bare minimum, I have to find a way to be happy, you know,
Yeah.
and that onus is on me. Like, I really
Right.
feel like you choose to be happy or you choose to just dwell in the crap.
Right.
And like, if there isn't crap, then there's no other side. Like,
Yeah.
there's no, you know, there's
It's
no other
funny
side.
because there is a real duality to it.
Right.
And one of the books I read last year that I thought was right behind me, but it's not, was by Elizabeth Gilbert. And I'm spacing on the title, but I will briefly look it up in a second. Her latest book was basically focused on artists, but it applies to athletes and really anyone who's got goals. And it's called Big Magic. It was about the weird conflict that exists between it being the best and the worst thing we do. And how that tension is where magic is. Like that tension, and I'm not one to like believe in necessarily magic, but there is something pretty incredibly powerful that rests between the struggle and the sacrifice and the martyrdom of toiling away. Sorry, my doggie's gonna make this a struggle. Daddy, come here. And what you were describing. So tell me, how do you take care of yourself, Lauren? Like, what do you actually do to take care of yourself?
I think the way I keep my sanity is trying to find some balance. I think balance is really important. I'm definitely a workaholic, whether it be athletics or whether it be actual work. I mean, I think I used to put in easy 10-hour days when I was working in the corporate world because I would finish my 8-hour day and then at least 2 hours of work at home. So I think, you know, for me, keeping in touch with my friends, because I have friends everywhere. I have friends in Denver and LA, and honestly, Snapchat's been very cathartic for me because you can just be silly and you can have conversations and see what's going on in other people's lives. Because one of the things that's tough about this venture is that I've essentially had to leave all of my good friends. Now, I can't say that, you know, my teammates aren't my good friends, but it's like, I feel like I'm missing out on a lot. You know, I'm missing out on birthdays for my niece and nephew, and I'm missing out on life events for my family, and I'm missing out on things with my friends. So just being able to keep in touch with them and the people that love you the most, you know, they're going to be supportive, and the fact that they're still excited and supportive and they make an effort to see you. So like, we had a race in Park City a couple weeks ago. My entire family came out. My friends came out. So I think spending time with friends and then just spending some time with myself and just being quiet and slowing down is so important. Because, you know, I'm at the point where I'm always so busy. Like, I can't eat in public like a normal human. I shovel. And then I'm always hungry at the end of my meal because and I don't even enjoy it because I'm always rushing. So sometimes just being able to like take a step back and realize that I have 20 minutes to just relax, and it's okay to have downtime and be by yourself and not always have to be around other people.
That's part of the reason why when we came up with Bossed Up Boot Camp, our training program for like women navigating these kinds of life inflection points, I couldn't do it without a piece on mindfulness and happiness. So like, we always have a component which is how to bring mindfulness into our daily lives and why it's so important for sustainability on the over the long term at all. And the other thing that I wanted to add that I love what you do is you're starting to take advantage of Facebook's like live video feature, and you're like doing these little broadcasts from the top of mountains essentially, or Olympic training places. And it's just such a cool way to keep in touch with the people you love, to show them a little bit about, like, literally to show them what the heck you're doing up there, which is such a good way to keep in touch with folks. But nothing.
Bobsled is a very much a blue collar sport, and it's a very expensive sport. And so,
interesting.
You know, in the US, it's not as popular as it is in Germany. Like in Germany, we're celebrities. It's ridiculous. People will show up at our hotel with pictures of me from like my college life on Facebook.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So like, you know, in Germany, they get paid really well to be bobsledders. In the US, we've got to compete with professional football, basketball, baseball, soccer, gymnastics. Like, no one cares about bobsled here. So it's also a way for me to kind of just bring some light to the sport and It's a really special community. It's a small community. And I would urge women to try it because the women's field is shrinking rapidly. But it's just really special because people do this for a long time, and you get to know other nations. And like my pilot, her name is Jamie Grubel Poser, and she married a German bobsledder. Like that's her husband, so she lives in Germany now.
That's so cool.
And my other pilot, Alana Myers Taylor, she also married a bobsledder. He's on the U.S. team. So it's just a very tight-knit community, and it's just a way to kind of bring some light to the sport, and hopefully, for funding purposes, people will be like, hey, that's really cool. I want to support these athletes. And so
that is really cool.
That's for me, but for people after me too. So
yeah. And I love it because you're showing us just how badass it is too. So can you, like, for the folks who haven't seen it or haven't tuned in yet or haven't followed you on Twitter at LAGibbs84 yet, tell us, like, what is the most physically taxing component of your role on the team? Like, what is it that you actually do when you're bobsledding?
So when I bobsled, I sit in the back. So basically my pilot and I get on the starting block, we push off, and then she jumps in and then I jump in, and then I'm just kind of along for the ride. And then I pull the brakes at the end. So the toughest part of bobsledding is not bobsledding. It's moving the sleds, because those sleds are like 360 pounds. And you have to move them on their side, and they're really expensive. So we are sponsored by BMW. So all of our two-man sleds are BMW sleds.
Wow.
So they cost like $100,000. So I always joke it's the most expensive Beamer I've ever ridden in.
Yeah.
Not the most comfortable, but more comfortable than other bobsleds I've seen. So just like being out in the cold all day and like moving sleds around, because you got to get them to the top, then you got to take them out of the scabbards, you got to flip it over, you got to get it to the line, you got to flip it down. So all that is pretty taxing. And then after that, after being at the track for 5 hours, and you have a lift and you have a sprint workout. So it's just it can be a long day.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, I am so appreciative of you giving us sort of the behind the scenes look. What is on the horizon for you? So obviously we've already heard your amazing articulate vision, getting a gold medal. I totally can see it. I totally believe it. So what, I guess I have got two questions for you. One is, like, what is the biggest thing you've learned throughout this whole journey? And two is, where do you want to go from here?
The biggest thing I've learned on this journey is that I am as special as I've been told I am. It just took a while and a lot of work to become that person. And then what was your second question?
Where do you want to take this from here? That's awesome.
I think after bobsled, assuming that the 4 years is what I'm going to do and then be done, I would love to write a book on my experience and just all of it, like, post-college and, corporate America as a female, and then bobsled as an athlete. And then I would love to be some sort of motivational speaker and just talk to people, because I just feel like there's not enough. I feel like there's a lot of people out there talking about how great their life is, but there's not enough people telling people that it's okay to struggle sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
And I think it's a hard thing to hear. I just wish that there's probably a lot of pain I could have avoided if I had known it was going to get better. So I want to be someone that people can look at and know that they give a crap about how they're feeling, and kind of understand, like, it will get better, and just share my experience, because it's easy to just say it's going to get better, but I'm just going to be straight with people and be like, this is what it was like. I hated my mid-20s. Now I'm loving life. I'm living a dream that I didn't even know I had, and it's just because I was willing to work hard and take those right chances.
Right. And don't shy away from continuing to take those chances, Lauren, which I love. So thank you so much for sharing with us so candidly. I feel like you've already started doing what you want to do, which is inspiring others and being candid about your story with us right here, right now. So on behalf of all of our bosses who are tuning in, or who are tweeting, or who are watching this later, thank you for sharing your story. And for anyone out there who is feeling like they're at that point in life where they're weighing some big questions and struggling over some big life choices, I want you to know that this community of courage is here for you. You got to tune in and subscribe on our YouTube channel, where we have awesome interviews with incredible career crush bosses like Lauren. And head on over to bossedup.com. Make sure you're on our email list to get a bunch of free resources to help you craft a sustainable and kick-ass career. Thanks so much for your time, Lauren.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, we're going to call it a day from here. So good luck, keep bossing, everyone out there, and we will talk with y'all soon. Thanks.